It began with a scream that no one heard, a quiet night in Brentwood that turned into one of the most famous murder cases in American history. 2 lives were taken, and one man, once adored by millions, stood accused. Tonight we revisit the story of O.J. Simpson, Nicole Brown, and Ron Goldman, the crime, the trial, and the nation that split in two. In the early morning of June 13, 1994, Los Angeles police arrived at Nicole Brown Simpson's condominium. What they found shocked even seasoned officers. Nicole and her friend Ron Goldman had been brutally murdered outside her home. Within hours, detectives began piecing together the scene, tracing evidence that led straight to Nicole's ex-husband, former football legend O.J. Simpson. Simpson had been one of America's most beloved figures, a Heisman Trophy winner, a record-breaking running back, and a charismatic actor who appeared in commercials and films. He represented success, charm, and the idea that fame could transcend race. But the perfect image was already showing cracks. Nicole had divorced him 2 years earlier, citing domestic violence. Police records showed past calls from her home reporting abuse. Behind the Hollywood smiles, there had been fear. When detectives questioned O.J., they noticed small cuts on his hand. He said he didn't remember how they happened. Evidence collected from his home, the infamous bloody glove, a pair of matching shoes, blood traces in his Bronco, painted a dark picture. Yet when prosecutors prepared to arrest him, O.J. disappeared. The world stopped when television screens across America showed the white Ford Bronco moving slowly down the freeway, trailed by dozens of police cars. Inside, Simpson sat in the back seat, holding a gun, as his friend Al Cowlings drove. Millions watched live. Families paused dinner, stores turned up the volume, and children remember sitting in front of the TV as helicopters hovered over Los Angeles. It wasn't just a man running from the law. It was a man the country thought it knew, now caught between fame and fear. After the dramatic surrender, Simpson was charged with a double murder. The trial began in January 1995 and quickly became more than a courtroom battle. It became a mirror of American society. Every word, every photograph, every emotion was broadcast nationwide. Inside the courtroom stood 2 powerful forces, the prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, and the defense, led by Johnny Cochran and Robert Shapiro. The prosecution believed the evidence was overwhelming. DNA analysis, relatively new at the time, linked Simpson to the crime scene. Blood samples from the glove, from the car, from the hallway of his mansion, all seemed to match. But the defense team countered with a different story, that the LAPD, a department already known for corruption and racism, had mishandled and possibly planted evidence. At the heart of the defense's argument stood Detective Mark Furman. When recordings surfaced of him using racial slurs and expressing hatred toward black people, his credibility collapsed. When asked under oath if he had planted evidence, he invoked his Fifth Amendment right to remain silent. That single moment, one man refusing to answer, changed everything. For many jurors, it confirmed what they already suspected. The police could not be trusted. But the story was never just about evidence. It was about history, about a community's long struggle with racial injustice. Just 3 years earlier, Los Angeles had burned after 4 white police officers were acquitted for brutally beating Rodney King. The images of those riots were still fresh when O.J. went on trial. For many African Americans, seeing the LAPD fail to convict a black man, especially a wealthy one, felt like poetic justice. For many white Americans, it felt like betrayal. The country was watching the same trial but seeing 2 different truths. When defense attorney Johnny Cochran stood before the jury and said, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," he wasn't just talking about a glove. He was talking about a system. The glove found at the scene appeared too small for O.J.'s hand when he tried it on in court. Whether that moment was theatrical or genuine, it left a lasting image. The defense didn't just cast doubt, they destroyed trust. On October 3, 1995, the world paused once more. Schools, offices, even hospitals stopped to hear the verdict. In less than 4 hours of deliberation, the jury declared O.J. Simpson not guilty on all counts. Cheers erupted in some neighborhoods. Silence and disbelief filled others. In classrooms, workplaces, and living rooms, people argued, cried, or celebrated. The verdict did not unite America, it split it open. Many believed justice had failed. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were gone, and no one was held criminally responsible. Others believed the verdict was the first time the system treated a black defendant with the same leniency often shown to white defendants. One man's freedom became a symbol of centuries of racial pain, yet the story did not end in the courtroom. 2 years later, in 1997, a civil jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole and Ron, ordering him to pay over $33 million in damages. The civil case carried a lower burden of proof, preponderance of evidence, instead of beyond reasonable doubt. This time, the same facts painted a different outcome. Over the years, the case inspired documentaries, books, and endless analysis. Many former jurors later admitted they felt pressure, not just from evidence, but from history itself. Some said they wanted to send a message after decades of police abuse. Others confessed confusion and exhaustion after a long emotional trial. It was clear that the case had never been purely about one man's guilt or innocence. It was about America's wounds. For Nicole Brown's family, the pain never faded. Her sister Denise became an advocate against domestic violence, speaking publicly about the signs that were missed. Ron Goldman's father, Fred, fought tirelessly to hold Simpson accountable, turning his grief into determination. To them, the verdict was not justice. It was failure wrapped in technicalities. O.J. Simpson tried to rebuild his life, giving interviews and writing a controversial book titled If I Did It, which many saw as a taunt. In 2007, he was arrested again, this time for armed robbery in Las Vegas. He served 9 years in prison before being released in 2017. His final years were quiet, but his name never left the public conversation. When he passed away in 2024, reactions were as divided as ever. Some mourned a fallen icon, others remembered a murderer who walked free. Looking back, the O.J. Simpson case changed how America sees justice, media, and itself. It marked the birth of the 24-hour news cycle, where trials became entertainment and public opinion became a courtroom of its own. It exposed how deeply racism and privilege could shape both perception and reality. And it reminded the world that the courtroom is not only a place for facts, but a stage for fear, memory, and identity. The LAPD, criticized heavily during the trial, promised reforms, but trust, once broken, was hard to rebuild. For many Americans, the case proved that truth is fragile when the system that delivers it is doubted. For others, it was a warning that fame and money can tilt the scales of justice. Nearly 30 years later, people still ask the same questions. Was O.J. guilty? Did the police plant evidence? Or did a corrupt institution lose credibility at the worst possible time? There are no easy answers. What's clear is that the trial was never only about one crime. It was about America itself, its wounds, its divisions, and its search for fairness in a flawed system. Perhaps that is why, even now, the story still haunts us. Because it asks something no verdict can settle. When justice and trust collide, which one do we choose? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can uncover more stories together. This content is compiled and analyzed based on publicly available information and open discussions.